With us right now is the former US Secretary of State, Mr. John Kerry. Mr. Kerry, thanks very much for speaking to CNBC TV18.
Very happy to be with you. Thank you.
December 2015, I think that was the high point of the Obama administration when your administration signed the Paris deal. Do you think we've covered enough ground? Are you satisfied with the progress we've made?
No, I'm not satisfied by the progress we've made. We've made progress. Lots of countries, including India, have made really good efforts to move forward. But the truth is that none of us in Paris agreed to do what is necessary to guarantee we hold the Earth's temperature where scientists tell us we need to. So we're behind now. And the latest reports are telling us clearly we have to do historically unprecedented things in order to get the job done. So India needs to obviously help, as a lot of the countries are, to move away from fossil fuels and move to alternative renewable energy, which is what brings me to India now, because I'm working with the RISE Fund and with an Indian company called Fourth Partners to try to make sure that we're deploying solar energy as fast as we can.
What do you feel about India's initiatives in the solar energy, renewable space? We also started a diplomatic initiative called the International Solar Alliance.
Right.
What do you feel about that?
I think it's terrific. And when President Obama and I were working on this, Prime Minister Modi was a terrific partner. Very serious about it, very committed to it. He continues to be committed to it. But there are some things that we think India could do that would facilitate development faster. For instance, there's a limit in different states for distributive solar power to 1 megawatt. And the Fourth Partner company I just talked about in one particular state is developing a 29 megawatt plant. So if you limit it to 1 megawatt here, but you do 29 over here, you're not maximizing the availability of solar power.
Uniformity.
You need uniformity. You need to recognize that that you want to try to reduce the dependency on the old utility concept and begin to have a more distributed platform, because it's more efficient, it moves faster, and it gets to people very directly.
Right. Senator Kerry, India has been focusing a lot on climate finance. And if I can just quote an official who's there for consultations in New York right now, they're saying, global community displayed an unprecedented speed in ratifying the Paris Agreement. Meeting the climate finance obligations also deserves the same momentum. Would you agree?
Absolutely. He's absolutely correct. I'm very upset personally that the G20 went to Argentina. 20 nations meet, the most powerful economies in the world, and they still have not lived up to the obligation to put $100 billion into the Green Climate Fund, which is critical for smaller, developing nations who can't afford the technology. And so we're helping ourselves if we were to put that money on the table. So your minister is 100% correct. I applaud him for raising the issue, and I think we need to move rapidly to fully fund the obligations under the Paris Agreement.
You know, Senator Kerry, the climate change, the climate deal that was signed way back in 2015 was so important for President Obama. It's so important for you as an administrator. But the US president, the current US president, even called it a hoax at one point in time. So where does
he's insulting, look, we're all used to what our president says today, but actually he's insulting the intelligence of every leader in the world. He's insulting the scientists of every country in the world. He's insulting the intelligence communities of every country in the world who tell us that this is going to be the cause of refugees growing. It's going to be the cause of dislocation of food production. It's going to be the cause of more fires, of flooding. Look at what happened in Bangladesh. Look at the storms we're having today. I mean, all of it comes from the intensity of the changes taking from climate. And I think you know, it's a tragedy to have the President of the United States not prepared to accept science.
The US-China friction, the trade friction, do you feel that it's undercutting the Paris Agreement, the climate deal as well?
I think it's bigger than just the climate deal. What it's doing is creating a dynamic in the global economy which you're seeing reflected now in the stock markets and the there's great concern about the potential of recession on a global basis. I think when you raise the tariffs step by step, what you're doing is you're making life costs, daily life, much more costly for working people, for the average folk, for poor people. They will suffer more. People who work hard for a living every day, who are struggling to pay their bills. And we see that being reflected in various countries today where there's great emotion surrounding daily life. I think that what happens is life is going to get tougher because the tariffs raise the cost that gets passed on to who? To the consumers. Right. And ultimately, they wind up paying for this tariff back and forth.
So this U.S. trade war that we're looking at right now, Donald Trump, the trade wars that he has triggered, that could lead to a severe economic fallout. That's what you
Well, it's possible. It's also, at some point in time, people will get back to the table. The question is how much damage will be done in between. And my hope is that we have a sensible negotiation that begins to calm everybody down a little bit. I think the world needs a better sense of equilibrium, a sense of calm, and it needs to have some goals that the world can share a sense of common purpose in, rather than just saying, me, we're going to be greater, to hell with the rest of you. That is not, it seems to me, in keeping with the spirit of the United States or the way we have behaved ever since the last century in the World War II. We've built institutions over the years, like the United Nations, to try to bring countries together to do better together. Right. And I think this is very dangerous, this motion where people are appealing to a populism, to a nationalism, to bigotry in some cases, to extremism, to negative impulses in people. We fought hard to get away from that years ago, and we have to fight hard today to stay away from it now.
U.S. pullout of the Iran deal, the implications for the future?
Well, I think it's dangerous because it's lost an opportunity to be able to reasonably resolve some differences between us and Iran. We have differences. We don't like the missile program. We don't like support for Hezbollah. We don't like arms going to Yemen. These are legitimate issues to raise. But the question is, how do you best resolve them? And I think the climate has been made more difficult, not less difficult, to try to resolve them.
Do you feel climate change will be an issue, will be a big issue in the 2020 presidential election?
Yes, I do. And it should be. It's one of the most critical issues we face on the planet today. When life in an ecosystem is threatened the way it is, and human beings don't have all the answers as to how that ecosystem works out, we're playing with real fire. This is dangerous. And when the scientists are telling us, here are the simple things you could do to fix it, but we're not, we need leadership that is prepared to fix it.
America under Donald Trump, how does the world see it?
Well, the world can speak to that. I'm not going to sit in India and speak for the world. I'm concerned as an American citizen. I've expressed that concern in America. But climate change is a global threat, and we have to talk about it wherever we are and whenever, because it is probably the most, it is without doubt, one of the top security challenges that we face on the planet. And ironically, it's probably the most solvable because we know what solves it, and that's energy policy. Right. We put the right energy policy in place, we can win this battle. That's why I'm optimistic. Right. We have a number of years here, we have an ability to beat it back, but we've got to use every day in order to make it happen. And
my last question, I have to ask this because we've been reading this, hearing about this very often over the last couple of weeks. Is John Kerry planning to run for president in 2020?
You can't get away from that, huh? I've said very clearly that I haven't taken anything off the table. And that's exactly where I'll leave it. It doesn't mean I'm actively preparing. It doesn't mean I've made any decisions or I'm thinking about it. But, you know, I'm satisfied saying I'm not taking anything off the table, period.
Right. Senator Kerry, thanks very much for speaking to us.
Great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Lovely conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.